Okay, hello Thoreauvians. I am Peter Alden. I am here being filmed by Magda Bermudez of the Thoreau Society. And today we're going to visit a few of the sites that Henry would have canoed to or through in his daily wanderings all over the rivers of Concord. And it's also some of the sites that he would have passed with his brother John on his book that became A Week on the Concord and Merrimack Rivers. But we're going to visit today Egg Rock, which is the confluence of the Sudbury River and the Assabet River and forms the Concord River. And this will be a site that Henry visited very often because he liked to canoe up the Assabet River to see the hemlocks and up to a point where the climbing fern occurs in West Concord. So let's go ahead and we're going to go visit the confluence of these rivers where the name Concord really originated. Okay, as we're walking to Egg Rock, I notice a stand of one of our worst invasives here in the Concord area, and it's called garlic mustard. Garlic mustard is one of 50 plants of herbs and spices that people might have in their garden to support their chef's habits. But these are the seed heads of the garlic mustard. It's a 2-year plant. The first year it looks like a violet, but the second year it grows this tall shoot and has these leaves that are highly toothed, and it comes out with little tiny ugly white flowers in May. And so dozens and dozens of people here in Concord trying to pull this out because it just sort of takes over the understory of our woodlands, the garlic mustard. But it does have a positive thing for human consumption because you can crush up these leaves and add it to various pesto mixes for your pasta. This is the winged euonymus, or burning bush, and it'll have little orange fruits in September. And this is another one of our invasive plants, most of which come from Northeast Asia, in the China, Far East Siberia, North Korea, North Japan area. But this is burning bush. And do you know what makes these little holes that look like golf cups? That is a chipmunk hole. And they go straight down. There's usually like 3 or 4 of them. As we approach Egg Rock, the confluence of the rivers, we're crossing over an old railroad bed. There used to be a train which started in Boston, went out through Lexington to Bedford, came over here to Concord, and this is the old rail bed that will meet up near MCI, or the prison in West Concord, and may be part of a loop that people can do where they bicycle out on the Minuteman bike trail out to Bedford. And someday we're going to connect it with the North-South Freeman bike trail, which starts in Lowell and works its way down to Framingham. And then people can join the Central Mass bike trail and go back to Cambridge so that people can do a loop. But this is the old reformatory branch. Hey there, Pooch, how are you doing? You know, this beautiful plant with the lovely red leaves in the fall, so delightful, and it's native. But it's what we call a native nuisance, and this is known as poison ivy. And it's interesting that I don't recall Henry Thoreau mentioning it as a problem. Henry, of course, walked through all the woods and stuff all over the country in different habitats and so forth, but I don't see that he had contacted poison ivy. So here we are at a very historic site. This again is where the British colonists that came out here in, 1635, and the local Muscataquit Indians met here and signed a little treaty that the British farmers, because the farmland's much better in the Concord area than it was around Boston, could farm out here, and a mutual intermingling of positive attitudes, let's hope, between the Native Americans and the European colonists. So this is the famous Egg Rock, but this is where the start of the Monroe Doctrine took place, a town way inland, but this is where we sort of started our westward trek, well away from our connections with Britain. And of course, this is the site of the Revolutionary War, beginning battles out here. And the Old North Bridge would be behind me about a half a mile downstream on the Concord River. Now, Hawthorne lived here, Emerson lived here, of course, and Louisa May Alcott, and so many famous writers in the 1800s. And this was a special place. And I believe it was Hawthorne thought this was the most estimable place in the world, but they particularly like this stretch up here of the Assabet River, where there's a big concentration of eastern hemlock trees, which we'll show you in a minute. But this is the famous Egg Rock, and standing beside me here for the winter weathers in the summer is a river birch. Notice the peeled bark right here. It's a relatively uncommon tree, the river birch here where the three rivers come together. And now we're going to scramble down and look at a little commemorative plaque that most people have never seen. On the hill Neshatuk, at the meeting of the rivers and along the banks, lived the Indian owners of Muscataquit. Those purple flowers that you see there are native, and they're known as pickerel weed. Pickerel is a type of fish, but that is the native pickerel weed. And that is in a book all Thoreauvians should have, The Audubon Guide to New England, by yours truly. I'm going to be quiet, just in case you can pick that up in the distance. The song we've just heard is the wood thrush. Henry's favorite birds, as he was a bit of a musician, were the two species of thrushes that are fairly common here in Concord. That was the wood thrush that does that sort of eolay, and then there's a second species called the hermit thrush. We have very few of in Concord, but a few up in Fairhaven Hill, and he apparently confused them a little bit, the hermit thrushes and the wood thrushes, but those were his favorite bird sounds in the greater Walden Woods area. We are now standing in front of a continuous stand of eastern hemlocks, a type of conifer with very short needles. And Emerson, Thoreau, Hawthorne, Alcott, all of them love this little stretch at the beginning, or the end, of the Assabet River here as a continuous zone of these beautiful hemlock trees, which are a tree of sort of a little bit further north. In Henry's day, I don't believe that Henry ever saw a beaver lodge. There was such pressure to trap beavers to sell as coats and hats and whatever around the whole world, not just America, but Europe and China. And beaver exploration and trapping led the exploration of much of the West. But beavers have come back to Concord and Thoreau country, and this is just evidence of the gnaw marks here of beaver workings. And the beavers don't really care about the hemlocks or white pines or conifers. They prefer these broadleaf trees. But this is evidence that there are beavers around, and they have returned big time, and this has allowed the establishment of many colonies of great blue herons that like to nest in dead trees in a new pond created by beavers.